So thank you. So I would like to introduce Emily DeSmit. She's an architect here at Ratio Architects, which is where I work. She is a project architect and she specializes in higher education, healthcare, dabble in this and that and everything else. And she is going to share a project that she recently completed with a team at Ratio down in Columbus, Indiana. And so she was kind of the point person on the project. So we are very blessed to have her here to show us around. We are recording this, so if you have friends that wanted to see this and didn't, we can get them the link to that. Also, I was going to say something else and I don't remember what it was. So we're going to go ahead and let Emily get started and share her screen, and she's going to show us how the project started from basically ground to final building.
Yep. So hi, I'm Emily, and so I'm going to pull up some renderings. We're going to pull up Google Earth. You're going to pull up a thing called Struction Sites, and what the contractor did is every week they went through the whole building and it had points where they took shots with a 3D camera. And so we're going to go by month and look at one spot in the building and see what they were doing each month in that one spot. We can kind of see the sequencing of what was going in when and like how long things took to get done. So I will share my screen in just a second here.
I remember what I was going to say. If you have questions, type them in the chat and we'll ask Emily at the end.
Awesome. All right. Had everything pulled up but Google Earth when I did this. So I want to show you, because they haven't updated Google Earth yet. So I want to show you what it looked like now. I'm just getting that pulled up before I share. All right. Share screen. Cool. Can you guys see it? Awesome. All right. So here is Columbus. So this is main Columbus, kind of what everyone thinks of. There's the interstate with the bridge, and Centra Credit Union's actually on the west side over here. And so this is their current, or was their headquarters, and they owned all of this land. And so they want to put a new building here. And this is a giant bioswale area. So all the water runoff for this whole parcel comes down onto their property. So we had to keep that, and it had to grow, and we had to put a giant building here. So that was the biggest major task. So we ended up putting it right here and reshaping how this went. So when we kind of fly around and go to street view, it's not there in street view here. So the building would be right here. But if we zoom back out, and you guys can do this too if you type in Centra Credit Union Headquarters into Google. See all these little dots? They did, Centra had, they were going to do community walkthrough when they got this project all done, and they couldn't do that because of COVID. So they had a virtual model walkthrough done, and it's linked into Google. So if you drop into one of these dots, you get to pop right into their building. So that is super cool. So we will, I'll give you high overview, and then we're going to look at one spot and kind of walk through what was going on when. If you also type in Centra Credit Union virtual tour, you get this little pop-up thing. It's on the internet, open to everyone. And you get this cool, it's interior only, but you get this cool like dollhouse model, which is really neat. You get to see the whole project. And this is what it looked like in SketchUp during design. 3 stories, basement, green roof, basically just an office building. They were spread out in all different buildings, trying to get into one building. So this is their one big home where they get to live. So very high overview. And then we will dive in here. Go to plans. So the area we are going to look in, they have this public area on the first floor, and then this big rectangle is all private, third or first, second, and third, and it's the same floor plan, no matter which floor you're on. We have cores, and then we have open office, and it's the same all the way up, very efficient, helps user groups know where things are. So we are going to hone in this break area, and we're going to be able to see stud work for restrooms and all of this cool inner workings of the building. Let me go to construction sites. So all these little dots are places the contractor went and took 3D photos every single week for us, starting in October. So we are going to start in October. And so here's where we are, right in the heart of the building. This project started construction in April. That's when they started moving dirt. And so this is October. So 6 months later, this is where we were. They had major steel in, they had floors in and poured, a concrete pan floors. We're on the second floor, so right in the middle of the building, into the middle of the building stacking wise. They had no windows in yet, but they did have some exterior facade going. They had metal stud, they had sheathing, they had insulation, they had weather barrier, but building still completely open. And as we look around, this is that break area. This is where casework and sink will go. So you can see where they've core drilled for future plumbing. They've done that. This is a chase that goes all the way through the building up to the roof, down to the first floor. And that's where a lot of the main ducts run. A lot of the roof drainage is coming through, and that you can start to see where they've started to pipe in some of that plumbing into this. And let's see, what else do they have? There's a little bit of conduit running through some of the stud that they have here. That'll be in wall. And then these are our restrooms that are in the little pod next to us. And you can see that they already have the carriers in for the toilets. And the plumbing stubbed in for that. So that happens very early on in the process. But other than that, it's pretty much just studs. And it's open. So then we're going to hop forward to November 15th. So this is a month later. And it's colder. Building's still not enclosed in. You can see hotter and resistance gypboard, and so they're starting to enclose in the chase, the mechanical chase that goes all the way through the building, and not much else has gone there above ceiling. We still don't have windows. And you can see they started putting in some of the wet walls in the restrooms as well, and it's also up high only. And that's because they're getting ready to start running in all the ductwork and above ceiling stuff. And they want to put that up first and then cut holes for these to run through, as opposed to cutting holes and then running it through. Just they can get tighter joints. It's easier to install the drywall. So that's what this contractor did from a sequencing point of view. And we had all the walls go to deck in this project. One, you always want your walls to go to deck when you're have an office up against a restroom. And two, they wanted to really make sure that there wasn't a lot of sound transference. And the best way to do that is have your walls go to deck and fill them with insulation. So they all go to deck, and you can see all the way down, they started putting in that upper drywall so they can start cutting through for the ductwork and other piping. So in December, they put in the windows, which is really cool. So building was starting to get enclosed. They had put in the windows. You can see they were using this area as a staging area for all of their stuff. That also, they got all the ductwork in that just between November and December. And so you can see where they cut out and then framed around for that ductwork, as opposed to making a hole and then getting it through there. And some of that is because they have to change sizes on the fly in the field, or they find, you know, an opening and they have to change sizes. So the contractors sometimes find it easier to build a wall and cut holes versus the other, even though we've done all that pre-coordination. Let's see, ductworks going in. You can see copper piping for water lines. You can see more conduit running through the walls, going into various places. In the restroom here, you can start to see some blocking is going in for future casework and sinks, and this would be for the mirrors. This is for wall equipment like grab bars and like hand dryers and paper towels. And more ductwork in the ceiling. They got exterior windows. Then over here we can see they put in the plumbing lines. A lot of the electrical is going in. So this was a lot of the in-wall MEP work kind of happened all at the same time in that month. And then about a month later, starts to look a lot different about a month later. Sorry, Anne. Shoot. Did that link work for people? Were they able to get in and walk through around the building with that link?
When I clicked on it, it said that you had to log in. Oh, never mind. Now it seems to be working. Yeah, that works.
I was able to pull it up. Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool feature, and Centra did that for the community, since they were going to do like a big community party. But okay, back up. So this is in January. They have the building fully enclosed now. You can start to see it's a lot cleaner on the inside. The whole building's enclosed, so no more weather. They just have their own dust and dirt. They started putting in insulation in the walls to get it all enclosed in. And the exterior glass glazing is in. Also notice they have temporary exit signage for the contractors. Now that it's completely closed in building, it's got walls, you can't just run wherever, so you need to have temporary exit lighting. They also have temporary, or you need exit signage. They also have temporary lighting that you can notice throughout that they have the strings. They have to be able to do their work, and the light's not in yet. So just things to think about. They've also started putting in more drywall. They've completely closed in that chase back there. We can't really see what's going on anymore. They've got all of the drywall in and the holes cut out for outlets and stuff for this kitchenette area. They've got more drywall up here. You can start to see they've got more conduit and pipes and stubbed up of areas. They got insulation in the walls for the restrooms. And so cable tray is going across some blocking for a sliding door that'll be going here. So you can kind of start to see what all the bones are behind this area. There'll be a TV over here, so they've got blocking for that TV. And again, just more staging. You can see how often the site moves around and the staging that they need to do everything in. So we'll do this and see how long it takes to load. Excellent. So big difference. They got drywall on all the walls now, which is really cool. So really defined space now. Can't see into the restroom. You can see that this is actually a coat closet. They don't have any of the ceiling prepped in, but the drywall is on. They've done their first finish work, which means they've filled the holes for where the screws were, and they've taped and mudded in where the seams are, and they're starting to fade that out. And so they'll do a coat of that, and then you'll see that they'll do a coat of paint, and then once you put the paint on, you can kind of see where there still might be divots or waves, and then they'll finish it again and then put on some more paint. So we'll see that coming up, but really starting to look like a space. It's a little cleaner inside, which is always nice to see. And yeah, let's skip ahead. So even more higher level of finish, getting here till the end. So they started putting in rough-in for the ceiling. This is a wood ceiling pocket. So they've got the rough-in and the ceiling starting to go in. They've finished the drywall and put a coat of paint on it to start to see kind of where everything is. You can see the rough-in for the TV. They've got the ceiling grid in. It's going in over here, as well as extra conduit lines. This drywall is all a lot more finished. And because we have all of our ceiling clouds as pockets, or they're all clouds, we called out to have everything above that to be painted dark gray. So it just, everything above there disappears a little bit more. So they've got that coat of paint on there. And then as they do their finish paint, they'll come up and they'll crisp up that line. So that's what you're seeing there with the dark. Sealing some ceiling going in. And then here, so they put the drywall up first, and then we had reveals in here that kind of marked off sections of where we're going to have tack board and not tack board. And so they retroactively go in and cut that out and kind of smoosh this in and get a nice reveal detail for us. So that work has gone in. And it's starting to look like a building. And then there was a break because it was COVID. And so we didn't do anything for a while. And then they started coming back in small crews in May. And really kind of keeping tight crews or keeping people to floors, and they were able to keep it moving. So this was in May. You can see a higher level of finish on the drywall. They got another coat of paint up, and then they'll do their final one there. They have the whole ceiling in and finished and mudded. So it would need coats of paint here soon. They finished around all of those reveals that we were talking about earlier. So still a lot of drywall work. Drywall work is dusty, so they like to get that done before they bring in a lot of other stuff. Hence the fans to try and help keep the dry all the mudding that they're doing. Big staging area. Again, things move around all the time. So just kind of move around to where they work. And they're trying to put in casework, which is really exciting. And then so here you start to see some color. Ceiling's all finished. They've got diffusers in, lights, sprinkler heads. They're starting to get some of those finished fixtures in. They got the first initial coat of the color paint on. And so this is where I was talking about earlier, where if you put the paint on and you realize that you can still see some screw heads or there's divots, or they were moving equipment in and they nicked the wall when they were moving it in. It happens. This is the time where they would finish that again, sand it all out, and then it would get really good and coated with that final coat of paint. So this is kind of their last chance to fix anything before its final coat of paint, and hopefully they don't ding it again so that we don't have to call them on it when we do our final walkthrough. You can see that final lighting is starting to go in, which is exciting because you can start to, they get better light in the space, which is nice than just the temporary lighting, which again will show some of those imperfections on the wall. So that's exciting. This space is actually lit now because they have the actual lighting in here and some of the ceiling tiles. So definitely starting to feel more real. They've got the plumbing fixtures in with that casework that went in. So not done, but much more of a finished space. So that was June. And this project finished in August. So they had only 2 months left at that point. Here we are. So flooring went in, wall base went in. These little pieces of tape here are marks where us or the contractor have gone through and said, hey, there's a ding here or nick here. You're gonna have to fix that and then repaint it. If they're good, they'll repaint the whole wall. If they're bad, they'll do a paint patch and then you'll not blend it in, and then you'll be able to see a big old paint patch there. But you can kind of see they did that here where they had to go in and patch some areas, and you can tell that they did an after the fact kind of paint roll. So we kind of note that and ask them to blend that in a little bit more as we go through. Final finishes are getting installed. So here's that tack board and a whiteboard that was going in between those reveals that we had. Doors were installed throughout the whole building. This was a big barn door that covered that storage room. And here's that full wood ceiling that finally got in. And then, so this had drywall on it the month before, and the owner made a change where they wanted to move a printer from one area way over into this area. And because that printer needed a data line, they had to cut a hole in the wall and refeed some things that were poking into this wall over here. So sometimes that happens and you have to take out finished work and then put it back in. And you can see the step for the TV. Casework is in. They have protected it. They're good contractors. They will protect their stuff. They don't want to ding that. While they're working around, you can't just patch casework like this, like you can a wall. You'd have to reorder a whole door or a whole new cabinet or something. So it behooves them to protect their work. But there's final life safeties going in. So a life safety light will go here. Sprinklers are in. We have our fire extinguisher cabinet. So it's just about ready. And then in August, here we are. So we did a final punch of the building end of August. So it was about 3 weeks after this. So they did 3rd floor down, interesting enough. So they built the building and then finish wise, they built it 3rd floor down. And so they finished the 3rd floor and then the crew would move down to the 2nd floor while another crew went into the 3rd. And then they would kind of follow each other down the building so they could get it all done in a condensed schedule. So while this floor looks pretty done, they were still finishing the 1st floor all the way up until very end of August. But they've got furniture, they got TVs, lights are on, things are clean, final lighting's going in. So things we're missing are owner equipment. They had big recycle bins and printers that were going in here. So when the owner takes possession of the building, they'll move a lot of that in. Protection is off of casework. Final exit signage is in. Everything's nice, clean, painted. Yeah. So huge overview of that one spot and how that construction went. Open to questions. We could also go to a different area of the building and see. We could do the same kind of high level walkthrough and see stuff from that vantage point. I can go outside. We can kind of see things too. So I will let me know what you guys want to do.
You said interestingly they went from the third floor down. Is there a normal order for finishing floors?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. Why can't? Try again.
I said, you said that they went from the third floor down, and I was wondering if there was a normal order that that floors get finished in. I'm just curious of the process, if you know.
It would depend per building. This one, that was just how they chose to do it when they were looking at scope and crew. It made more sense to go third floor down. Since that box is the same 321, and then one has the additional kind of public area and cafe, it had more specialty items. So they just, some of that stuff kind of needed to get ordered later. So it made sense for them to just kind of work top down for this project, but there's not really a rhyme or reason. Sometimes, depending on how big the building is, the process, and when you can get stuff enclosed in, if you can get the first couple floors enclosed in enough, you could work bottom up, because the interior crews could come in and work on the first floor while they're still enclosing the upper floors. This building was small enough that they couldn't do anything inside until the whole thing was enclosed. So.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. Emily, can we move to the outside and kind of see how you installed the green roof?
Yeah. Yeah, what did you want to see specifically?
How the green roof went in. We discussed 2 weeks ago about green roofs and other sustainable aspects of construction.
Okay, we'll go to the second floor again because we can see it from the second floor. I find this so weird. I'm talking to you through the headset, but it's coming through the speakers on my computer, so it's very strange. So what was nice was that the green roof was on the L, like little added piece on the first floor. So when you're walking through the second floor, you're right up on it. So a nice green area, not just looking at a dirty white roof. So it was something that the owner was pushing for, and it was non-negotiable from a budget standpoint, which was great. Because usually owners are like, yes, let's do a green roof. And then they get there and they're like, oh, no, I don't want to spend the money for that. But this client was very, it's there, it's not going away, find something else to cut it for over. So that was nice with this project.
Was the green roof accessible? Like, could you walk out on it, or is it just to look at?
It's just to look at. There is a door, they can get out there and maintenance it. But it is not for lounging. So there was the basic green roof when it was completed. I was up there about a week, 2 weeks ago, and it was all brown. It hadn't quite greened up yet. But let's go back a tidge. Let's see if this will load. So this was October, back when there were no windows on the building. So they got the green roof down. They've got their drains, and they're doing some prep. As he goes all over there. Let's see. And I think it looked like that for a while. Let's see. We jumped to January. They had cover board down, but not the final roofing. And for this, the contractor asked if they could use the roof for scaffolding and lay down area for their equipment, because of how they couldn't reach the upper third floor without either pulling in a giant crane or building scaffolding on top of the roof. And so we had our structural engineer do some calculations, and we set some pretty strict ground rules for protecting it. And that's, you know, it would need to be checked and passed all safety things so they didn't puncture anything or compress the insulation too much, but they were allowed to use it as a laydown area. So it looked like this for a while, I believe. It's probably February sometime.
We had a question in the chat while this is loading. What was your favorite part of the whole project?
Of the whole project? As in process or like design? Or is it my choice?
How about both?
I enjoy the part where we get to actually show them 3D like views and or walkthroughs of the building, because we've taken all this information, they've given us their wish list, and we've thrown in there what we can, and then they get to walk around it and they're like, oh my goodness, like they're like, oh, I see it now, or I understand. So I always enjoy sharing, like getting our vision down in a medium that the owner can understand. And we were able to do 3D rendering software where we could kind of walk through the building with us, which helped a lot with this client, kind of conceptualize, because their buildings they were coming from are really tiny, and like this corridor is 10 feet wide. And so in the plan, they couldn't appreciate that it was a 10-foot wide corridor. They're still thinking it's just this tiny little thing. So getting them, being able to render something or get them into, show them exactly what like their stair is going to look like and how open this area is. And then they get it. I always enjoy that when the client gets it. Moment. And my favorite part of the project is probably the stair. This area is really cool because you've got the green roof, and then behind us you've got this giant open walnut wood stair with the metal panel that goes down the whole corridor. So it's fun. So the stair looked like this for months and months and months because they did not want to put any wood treads on it until the very, very last second. And then when they did, it was a no one touches this area zone. It was very protected. Yeah, so you can see, I think they do have roofing down now. So somewhere between January and February, they put the TPO roofing down. They've put the cover over the drains. So this roof is done and closed in. And then the green roof system we did was just a tray system that kind of came in and sat down on top of it and had little edges. And then we had stone to cover the edge part. So that's how we treated our green roof. All right, let's see if we can.
Does a green roof have to be watered more than a traditional ground grass?
Initially, it might need to be to help roots establish. Theoretically, it's just going to get the same water that the rest of the ground's going to get, except that it will dry out a little more. Because it's on a roof, it's exposed, it's usually not shaded. And B, just because it's not as deep as the ground might be, so the roots might not, like, it'll just dry out more because it doesn't have all of the underneath to kind of keep it wet. So this does have an irrigation system in it. I believe, or no, it doesn't. It can. This one does not. They're gonna just sprinkler it for a little bit. But sometimes you can put in irrigation systems to keep it, just to get it established. So here we are in April. So this finished in August. So because they're doing drywall finishing, they taped off the windows to mitigate dust getting into all this, the silicone and sealants here. But you can, they've got the metal panel up on the stair in here, and we have this gradient that goes all the way down the corridor, which is really cool. Smoke baffle. So we were allowed to have the open stair because we only went 3 floors. So it's just 2 runs of stairs. And because we have the drop down smoke baffle, we were able to have it as an open stair. The other enclosed stair is way down there at the other end for our exit. Jump ahead to June. So there it is. Let's see, let's go. Let's see if we can. So in May, they still hadn't done anything. Ha. No. So here they've put down the initial tray system, and then I don't know if the plants are in there yet. Looks like they've got a cloth over it to either protect the plants and seed because it's raining, or just protect the initial tray system before they put everything in it. But we didn't have any sort of design or anything with this. They were just filling the whole thing with a hardy sedum. Still just that there. So you got to jump forward 2 weeks and they have green roof in there, it looks like. So maybe they had the green roof installed and they just had it covered, it looks like.
We had another question. Why did you choose your career, Emily?
I always liked school projects, and well, I didn't realize it was design. I liked problem solving. And so when like you do book reports and homework and all of that, but as soon as they gave you some sort of like off project you had to do, all of a sudden I'd get really excited about it. And just the problem solving aspect is really neat to me. And then who doesn't love playing around with design stuff and using creativity? So I think that's what really drew me to it, was the problem solving and just my creative side.
You went to Ball State, right?
Mhm.
But can you tell us a little bit about that process? What made you choose Ball State?
Yeah. So when I went to Ball State, it was let's see, it was the 5.5-year program, and then after being there a year, they switched it to a 4-year program plus a 2-year master's. So that's what I graduated with. So you go to school for undergrad for 4 years, and then you reapply again to get into a graduate program. Kind of gives you the option of you could go somewhere else for graduate school if you wanted to, or just continue on there. Let's see, so your first year, they expose you to everything, kind of all disciplines there at Ball State. It's called CAP because it's the College of Architecture and Planning. They have architecture, landscape, and urban planning and historic preservation. So the kind of cover exterior building stuff. We have an interior design school, but it's not affiliated with the architecture school. It's affiliated with a different school. So that's the only thing that some programs have that Ball State doesn't have, are those two things. The interior and architecture are linked together. But you're exposed to all three your freshman year, and then you choose which one you want to do second year, and then you spend the next 3 years focusing in on that, and they teach you all sorts of fun and interesting stuff. And then you can decide if you want to do that for graduate school or do other things. We have a lot of people here at Ratio actually who did a different undergrad. A lot of them did business school or other professions, and then went and got their master's in architecture, and that's a 3-year program. So it's a little bit accelerated, but then when you get done, you have a master's in architecture. So a 3-year architecture grad school, intensive grad school would be the same as 6 years of undergrad and grad school. Just as another way to do it. So this was June. Let's see, I'm gonna go. Walkthrough, headquarters. This is just so cool. I'm so excited that the owner did this. You can just walk anywhere in the building. So this wood is reclaimed wood from various parts of Indiana that a company reclaims, and then they finish and then sell it as a product for designers to use on buildings. So this is all reclaimed barnwood from Indiana, which is very cool.
Had the wood been previously painted, potentially?
Potentially, yes. And they have a couple different grades of the wood that you can get there. So they've got reclaimed wood that is like left as is, like restored but left as is. This one was a little rougher, so it's been restored but left to have more of a rough texture to it. And then they have one where it's super polished down, all the knots are out of it, and it looks more like the doors kind of look like a really polished walnut finish. So that's what this is. This is walnut. We were originally pushing for the like flat, nice, no knot finish to kind of go with all the edgy lines we have in here. But the owner really liked the rustic when we showed them that option. So they went with that, which adds a nice texture in here against the concrete too. So we were happy with it. And our interiors team did do all the furniture for this as well, which was really cool. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes your interiors, like furniture is a whole beast. So you don't, as architects and interior designers, you don't always get to design that. You can put in your floor plan that we're thinking groupings of stuff will go here, but when they do the furniture design, it could be different. You'd have no control over what the finishes look like. And as you can tell, the fabrics make a huge impact on what your building looks like. So we got to do the whole thing, which was really cool, which is why it's very cohesive and we think it works together really well. Let me go into the open office part too.
And did your company prepare this plan for the customer, or was it an outside company?
This specific thing that we're looking at,
Yes.
it was an outside company that the owner hired to do the walkthrough. And then the picture construction photos we were looking at, the contractor did that as part of their site verification, because their on-site super has to review things as well. And they have their own QA/QC teams that are watching this because they should be catching things before we get there on site. We're not catching everything. We're just catching things when we're there. So they use it for their document purposes as well. And it was super handy because they were moving quick with some of the stuff as questions would come up. And it was like, well, what was in that wall? Where did you put that? We need to double check that. And we were able to go in spots and retroactively go through and zoom around and zoom in, and it helps tremendously. Because if we didn't have those, we'd have to say, okay, well, cut that wall open. We got to see what you did in there. If they covered it up too quickly. So kind of saves their own butts as well. They have the shades pulled for the walkthrough, but one thing that was really important was that everyone had access to daylight. Their other buildings are dark, and they didn't have any windows in their previous headquarters. They had really tall skylights, so there was daylight that had a nice cast in the room for lighting, but no views. So with this one, with the shape of the building being so skinny, like when we were standing in that middle break area, you can see both ends of the building. And light can kind of penetrate through from north to south. And then everyone sitting in these open offices gets nice daylight, and all the offices get to look out through a window. So it was kind of a nice win-win, very efficient floor plan. Their colors are blue and green. So they really wanted to show off blue and green, and we had to mute them down a bit, using kind of McDonald's as an example. McDonald's does not, like, their headquarters does not look like a McDonald's. They don't necessarily use the branding colors. It's still like they have their own feel, but it's not like in your face McDonald's, because they work there. They know where they work. You don't need the advertising. So well, this is very nice, very corporate. The colors in the furniture are very bold and very poppy, because they really wanted to have that come through. So I have some breakout areas. Yeah, anything else?
I think this is great. Does anybody have any other questions for Emily?
How many total people in your company worked on this project together?
Oh, good question. Let's see. So we had a principal in charge who is top level, kind of oversees things, tells management how we're doing, staffing, all that. We had a project director, which was a little bit more in the weeds, did a lot of the initial contact with the clients. And then we had me, so I was project architect, and on this job, I had direct access to the client. So I was the one day-to-day facing with them all through design and construction. Something goes wrong on the first one they call. So it was me, and then we had an interior designer, and then each of us had someone helping us with drawings. So both me and the interior designer were doing all of our own drawings with some side help. I think right at the end of construction documents, right before the set got issued for the contractors to bid on, we had 2 or 3 additional people just to kind of help with that final push, but they were only on it for about a month or so. So not that many people really on the team when you think about the building, but definitely oversight, helpers, go-to people.
What about like electrical engineers or structural engineers?
We did, yes. So we had a MEP firm for mechanical, electrical, plumbing. They had 1 point person for each discipline. And then I'm sure they had some people working underneath them that we didn't always get to see. And then we had a structural engineer, and it was just one guy, and I think he had another person with him helping him on the project. We did not have a technology consultant for this. Centra hired they had a consultant that did all their AV anyway, and so they brought them in to help with counts of TVs and what do we need here and what's the aspect ratio and some of that stuff. We didn't really have any special consultants with this one, just because it's an office building. It's not a spec office building, but it was just an office building. Oh, we can't go in there. That is that's the boardroom. And down here, oh, here we go. We can go in. This is super big TV. So they have the 4 screens that they can make one big TV screen. And this is their giant boat table that they wanted.
How
I was
often
really
is
enjoyed it.
the architect and the interior designer, are they always from the same firm, or sometimes that's 2 separate firms?
Sometimes it's 2 separate firms. Depends on what the owner wants to do with contracts. We have both in-house and office. We also have landscape. We did initial landscape design for this, but all the work was done by someone else. But we often, maybe not 50-50, maybe 40-60, 40% of the time that the interiors is out of house. And so we just have to coordinate with them, which is the same as we would coordinate here. It just takes a little bit of extra communication to make sure that we're all in the same, just coordinating meetings, because you can't just look over from your desk and holler at them. More emails and phone calls, but yeah, not all the time. Some firms are only architecture, so they always have to get an interior designer on board. And sometimes the interior designer is under the architect's umbrella. Sometimes the owner will hold everyone's contracts. So for this, we were the architect, and we also had interior design, and then we held all of our subcontractors contracts as well. So meaning MEP, structure, and civil were all underneath our umbrella. So we were getting paid, and then we paid them. It makes it easier to coordinate and do workflow. If the owner is holding all of the separate contracts, we don't really have, I mean, we have to communicate and coordinate with the other subs, but the owner has the say. They own the money, and so they kind of have the say. And so sometimes it's a little hard to get some things done. It's just a different process. It's not that it can't be done.
We had a question in the chat. How was your job affected with the whole pandemic going on?
Yeah, so this project was scheduled to finish the first week in May. So that did not happen. So in March, they were working. I think they shut down for about 3 weeks where no one was on the job site at all. At a time where they were ramping up, they had to stop completely. I think when they started going back, they were minimizing it to areas of the building. And so they were trying to progress as much as they could while limiting the people in the building and crews overlapping and the such. And they had check-ins and like daily stickers and masks and temperature updates. And then at some point they just kind of stopped doing that. And they were like, oh, we hope we're fine. So we ended up doing, as they were progressing and had everyone on site, I think they only had one outbreak and had to shut down for 1 week, and then everything else they were able to keep isolated. So they were lucky from that standpoint. And then for us, what it meant for us was that we initially weren't going down there for the walkthroughs, just being safety conscious, knowing that they weren't really all wearing their masks. There were just people everywhere touching everything. So we did a lot of our site visits through the structure site that I showed you. And so we would schedule time, the interior designer and I would schedule time to walk through the building and just take a look at where they were. We would take screenshots on our screen, make them notes into the contractor, just like any other walkthrough we would have done where we just took pictures. So it was fairly easy, and we didn't have to do the driving. Now, being on site's always better. When I started showing up on site, it was like, oh yeah, okay, that's what's happening. But it actually worked out fairly well. The owner was understanding, but definitely getting anxious because they wanted to get in this building. And then they realized that, oh, no one wants to come back to work. So then they were opening a building to no one. But it's such a big building that they were able to move over some pods fairly effectively. And then as other groups started coming in, they had kind of shifts. And when other buildings were coming over and when people and groups were in. So I think all of the buildings are moved over now. It took them about 4 or 5 months to get everyone out of the old buildings into this one. And then I think they're at 50% capacity for the building right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily, for sharing the project. Students, if you have any more questions, feel free to email Ellie or I, and you can get them to Emily, especially while you're looking around on your own through the Google Maps link and things like that. definitely encourage you to look through all of that stuff and maybe glean a few ideas for your own shipping container home for finishes and furniture and layouts and things like that. Before we let you guys go, just another reminder that